Jessica Jones Season 3 came out this past Friday on the 14th, and I spent the weekend watching it. It is the last Marvel Netflix TV show that's going to have any content released. It was canceled last year, along with Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage. So this is the last thing that's coming out on Netflix from Marvel. Now this season picks up right where the second season left off. So I'm going to give some spoilers for the second and first season because you kind of need it to know where the plot is for this one. So one of the biggest problems starting out at the beginning of the season is the relationship between Jessica Jones and Patricia Walker. Because at the end of the second season, Trish ends up killing Jessica's mother because her mother kept going on rampages where she would kill people and just had to be put down in the eyes of many people, and Trish ended up being the one who did it. So that creates a bit of a tension, of course, in their relationship, which is fairly understandable. Now, something I did like about this season is I liked what they did with pretty much all the characters in this season. A lot of it made sense to me in the character decisions and their arcs and everything. And pretty much all of the other supporting characters are returning, which, like I just said, includes Trish and Malcolm and Hogarth are the main supporting characters that are returning. But so is Trish's mother, Dorothy, and a couple smaller characters like the police chief. Malcolm started working for Hogarth at the end of the last season, and he's dealing with the moral ambiguity of working for her. So he is having a really tough time just with his life in general at the beginning of this season. And Hogarth is still dealing with the repercussions of her diagnosis of ALS, which was a big focus on her arc of the last season. And it isn't as focused on that this season with her, but there is still a bit of story with it. Now, I hadn't watched any of the trailers or anything for this season because I like the TV shows, and for the most part when a TV show is returning, I usually don't watch the trailers when I already know I'm going to watch the season because it kind of keeps it fresh to me. So I didn't know who the villain was in this show, but if you've seen the trailer, I'm only going to get into what's shown in the trailers and everything. And the villain is Gregory Salinger, who is Fool Killer in the comics. But of course, since this is the more grounded Marvel show, he does not have a full costume like any of the other characters do. And I do think that this is a step up from the last season as far as an antagonist goes, but it still does not reach the heights of Kilgrave in the first season, because that was a perfect dynamic between Jessica Jones and Kilgrave. That dynamic stood for a lot of the tone and the themes of the show and everything, and that worked perfectly. I do still think that they should have kept him in the show. They shouldn't have killed him off in the first season, but that's just because I think he's a great villain. I think he's one of the best live-action Marvel villains that have been put to screen, in my opinion. But Fool Killer, or Gregory, in this season is pretty decent of a villain. His whole thing is that he's ultra smart and all that, and he's obviously a very socially repressed person, but he goes under this illusion of being this star citizen and everything, which I couldn't help but draw comparisons when they kind of did that, and with the way they approached him as his public view and what Jessica Jones knows about him, had quite a bit of a comparison. In my opinion, what I kept thinking about was John Lithgow's Trinity Killer from the 4th season of Dexter. And it's kind of an unfair comparison because that season of Dexter was that show's best season, and John Lithgow did an amazing job with that character, and it was an amazing villain, and that was a treat to watch. While this is a bit of a, I guess you could say, the diet version of that villain, where you do see him do violent things, but you don't really get into his mind and what his real purpose is. He keeps saying what it is, but you don't really learn too much about him other than when they try to delve into his past. Now, as far as the episodes themselves, I do still think that this season really could have benefited from having a 10 episode slot of a season instead of the 13, which I think has been very apparent in some of the slower seasons of these Marvel Netflix shows, is that they could be very easily compressed, and that still stands true here. But for the most part, most of the episodes don't get too pedantic or anything like that. I did have a little bit of trouble with the first 3 episodes because I could not tell what the direction of the season was going to be as far as the narrative goes. But the 4th episode picks it up and you kind of understand where it's going from there. There is some very satisfying moments in this season, and my favorite episode is episode 8, aka Camera Friendly. I think that's the best episode in the season. I think it's one of the best episodes from the show because of a specific character choice they made, which I'm not going to spoil here. You'll have to watch it for yourself. But I thought it made a lot of sense, and I was happy that they did it because it really benefited the arcs of certain characters. And that's really all I'm going to say about that so far. Without spoiling anything, the season ended in a very respectable way. It did not feel like there was any type of cliffhanger they were trying to shoehorn in to the end of the season to get ready for more content. It felt like a good, definitive ending for the show while keeping it ambiguous, so it's still open for more content, but it was also a good stop for the narrative of this season and the series. So if it doesn't come back, then that's going to be okay for the most part, because it did feel like it actually ended, which is kind of depressing to say. The acting, as usual, is pretty good. I think Kristen Ritter does a really good job as Jessica Jones. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from her in this season, because you see a lot from her in the last 2 seasons, and I felt like they did take away a little bit of focus from her in quite a few episodes in this season. But she still did a really good job. I think that it was interesting that they brought the Hellcat persona for Patricia Walker in, which isn't a spoiler because they had alluded to that at the end of season 2, and you do see her kind of focusing her powers and honing her powers and everything and becoming the Hellcat persona from the comics, which I think they did that pretty well too. Now overall, I do think that this season is slightly better than the last season. It has a little bit more of a focus. It has a better antagonist in this season, but I do not think it reaches the heights of the first season. I still think the first season was one of the best seasons of television that Netflix has produced. I thought that season was amazing, but it is a solid season. So my overall review for Jessica Jones Season 3 is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. I think that's fair to say. I think that it was overall solid, so I'm going to give it kind of an average review and score for it. Have you guys watched the newest season? Are you excited for Disney Plus coming out? Because I'm assuming that they're going to have some more content with Marvel coming out with that, of course. They already revealed some shows, but I am still wondering if they're going to bring any of these shows back. So let me know what you think. Like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to. And I'll be back with another video later in the week.